The twin sons of Draxor 5 beat down mercilessly on the mining colony. Dust swirled in the thin, dry air, coating every surface in a fine gray layer. Among the scattered miners and traders, a small group of slaves was dragged across the cracked ground. One of them, a tall, alien female with iridescent blue skin, moved slowly, her wrists bound in heavy metal cuffs that cut into her flesh. Her name was Lysera, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the world around her, searching for any chance of escape. Lysera had not always been a prisoner. Once she had been a scholar, traveling the stars to study distant planets and cultures. Her curiosity had brought her to Draxor 5, where rumors of rare minerals had drawn her attention, but the moment she stepped onto the planet, she was ambushed by slavers. They had shot down her transport, trapped her in energy nets, and dragged her to this grim settlement. Now chained and weak from days of forced labor, she trudged behind the others. Every few steps, the overseer, a massive alien with green scales and eyes like burning coals, shouted orders and struck any slave who faltered. "Move, faster!" he barked. "Do not disgrace me with your weakness." Lysera kept her head down, focusing on each step, resisting the pain in her arms and legs. She had learned long ago that resistance only brought more suffering. Still, she refused to let them see her spirit break completely. Inside, she clung to the hope that someone somewhere would see her worth beyond these chains. The slaves were herded into a large open yard where other captives were already assembled. Some were from her own species, others from distant worlds. All of them carried the same hollow look in their eyes, the look of those who had been stripped of dignity and hope. A loud bell rang, and a holographic display appeared above the yard. It projected the image of the auction master, a thin, wiry alien with multiple eyes. "Slaves, step forward!" the master shouted. "Do not delay. Today you will find your new owners." Lysera's stomach twisted. The thought of being sold like an object made her blood run cold. She had seen markets like this before, only from a distance, reading about them in old records. But to stand here to be treated as property was far worse than anything she had imagined. She stepped forward, her chains clinking with each movement. Her body ached, but her mind remained alert. She studied the crowd, noticing the different aliens evaluating the slaves. Many whispered among themselves, some laughed, mocking the captives' desperation. A few seemed serious, judging skill and strength, calculating who might be worth the highest price. The auction master's gaze fell on Lysera. "Ah," he said, his multiple eyes narrowing. "A rare one indeed. Blue-skinned, agile, intelligent-looking. She might serve well for labor, or for knowledge work," he smirked. "We shall see who values her most." Lysera forced herself to remain calm. She could feel the fear rising, but she pushed it down. She could not afford to give them the satisfaction of seeing her panic. Her mind worked quickly, thinking of ways to survive this ordeal. She had no weapons, no allies here, only her mind and her body, and perhaps, just perhaps, her luck. From the back of the crowd, Lysera noticed something unusual. A human was moving through the throng, tall, solidly built, with dark hair and piercing eyes. He moved differently from the other buyers. He didn't leer or sneer at the slaves. He didn't calculate their worth only in terms of profit. Instead, he seemed interested. Observant, patient, the auction began. Slaves were called forward one by one. Each time, the master's voice rang out, "Do I have a bid? Do I have a bid?" Most of the crowd offered small amounts of credits, arguing over each captive's value. Some slaves were taken away immediately, their chains replaced with collars that would mark them as property. When Lysera's turn came, the crowd fell silent. The master raised his claws. "And now the blue one, the alien female who walks with pride despite her chains. Who will bid?" Several aliens offered low amounts, dismissing her as weak from captivity. Lysera's heart sank. She had been hoping for a chance, for someone to see more than her chains. Then, unexpectedly, the human stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "I will take her." A murmur ran through the crowd. Humans were rare in this sector, and they were not known for buying slaves. Many of the traders laughed. "Do you know what you are doing?" one sneered. "This one is worthless. She is only trouble." "Are you certain?" The human's eyes met Lysera's for a brief moment. In them she saw no greed, no mockery, just understanding. "I am certain," he said. "Her value is hers to decide, not yours." The auction master's expression twisted. "A human? Bidding on this one? Very well, the human wins. Prepare her. Two guards stepped forward to take her chains, but the human raised a hand. I will handle it, he said. Slowly, carefully, he removed the metal cuffs that had dug into her wrists for days. The cold metal fell to the ground with a dull clink. Lysera flexed her arms, feeling warmth return to her fingers. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she tasted something she hadn't felt in months. Freedom. But the moment was tempered by caution. She had seen humans before, and she knew not all were kind. She waited, watching him closely, ready to react if he proved to be another master rather than a liberator. The human offered her a small smile. You are free now. No one will command you. No one will chain you again if you wish. Lysara's eyes widened. Freedom. The word felt foreign, almost unreal. She had dreamed of it, but it had always seemed distant, unreachable. Now, standing before this human who had chosen to see her as more than property, she felt hope stir deep inside her. Yet the slavers were not done. Some of them were angry at losing the auction. They shouted threats, claiming she was theirs, trying to intimidate her and the human. The human did not flinch. With a voice that carried authority, he said, Back off. She is under my protection now. Try anything and you will regret it. The slavers hesitated, surprised by his confidence. Humans had a reputation for unpredictability, and he seemed prepared for anything. Muttering among themselves, they finally backed away, leaving Lysera and her new owner alone in the dusty yard. Lysera took a tentative step forward. She had no words, only a mixture of relief, suspicion, and cautious curiosity. The human nodded, as if understanding the storm of emotions inside her. My name is Captain Jarek, he said. I travel the stars, sometimes for trade, sometimes for work that needs discretion. I saw you and I chose to help. You can trust me or not. The choice is yours. Lysera studied him carefully. His demeanor was steady, not arrogant, not cruel. He seemed human, yes, but also different from the slavers who had tormented her. Slowly, she allowed herself to nod. I will trust you, she said softly, almost a whisper. Jarek offered her a hand. Then let's get you out of here. You deserve better than this place. As they walked away from the auction yard, Lysera could feel the weight of the chains lifting, not just from her wrists, but from her mind. For the first time in months, she could breathe without fear, yet in the back of her mind, she knew the world was still dangerous. Slavers were relentless. Freedom was precious, but it was not guaranteed. And so as the twin suns dipped lower on the horizon, casting long shadows across Draxor 5, Lysera stepped forward into an uncertain future. One thing was clear. She was no longer just a slave. She was a being with a choice, and with the human named Jarek by her side, perhaps she could reclaim more than just her freedom. The journey had begun, and the stars above promised both peril and hope. Lysera did not yet know what challenges awaited her, but she knew one thing for certain. She would no longer be chained. Not in body, not in spirit. The desert winds of Draxor 5 still whipped around Lysera as she followed Captain Jarek away from the auction yard. Her legs ached, her skin was raw from the chains, and her mind raced with fear and uncertainty. She kept glancing at Jarek, trying to read his intentions. Could she really trust a human? She had known humans only through stories, some heroic, some cruel. Yet this one, something in his calm eyes told her he was different. Jarek led her to a small hovercraft hidden behind a cluster of rock formations. The machine was old, patched with metal plates and painted in dull gray, but it hummed with power. This will get us out of the colony fast, he said. Slavers move quickly. We need speed if we want to stay ahead of them. Lysera hesitated at the door. What will happen to me after this? She asked softly. You will have a choice, Jarek replied. You are free to go anywhere, do anything. No chains, no masters. You decide. For a moment, Lysera wanted to laugh. Free? She had not felt freedom in months, and now someone offered it without conditions. Her throat tightened. I don't know how to be free, she admitted. You learn, Jarek said simply, climbing into the cockpit. Step in. The first lesson is survival. She obeyed, stepping into the hovercraft. The machine shuddered as it lifted off the ground. Below them, the dusty streets of the colony became a blur. Slavers were already shouting behind them, chasing with small, fast hovercars. But Jarek did not panic. He steered the craft through narrow canyons, using the terrain to hide from pursuers. Lysara clutched the side of the hovercraft, her heart pounding. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They usually don't," Jarek replied. "But neither do we." The pursuit lasted nearly an hour. Dust clouds rose behind them, but Jarek's skill kept them ahead. Finally, he veered into a hidden canyon and shut off the craft's engines. They drifted silently, surrounded by steep cliffs. For the first time, Lysara felt a measure of safety. "Why are you helping me?" she asked cautiously. "You could have ignored me or sold me somewhere else." Jarek shook his head. "I've seen enough cruelty to last a lifetime. I don't need more. You deserve better. And besides," he glanced at her with a small smile, "I don't like injustice. Some things are worth standing up for." Lysara felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in months. No one had ever said such words to her. She wanted to believe him, but trust was fragile. "I thank you," she said softly. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Just survive. That will be thanks enough." As the suns dipped lower, casting long shadows across the canyon walls, Jarek set up a small camp. He activated a portable energy shield that created a bubble of calm in the harsh environment. The night air was cooler and the stars began to shine. Lysara stared at the sky, remembering the nights she had spent chained in the slave yard, dreaming of this very freedom. "You will need to eat," Jarek said, offering her a small packet of rations, "and we need to rest. Tomorrow we move again. The slavers will not give up easily." Lysara hesitated, then took the food. It tasted strange but nourishing, filling her stomach for the first time in days. She felt her body slowly regain strength. How do you always stay calm?" she asked. Jarek looked at her thoughtfully. "Calm comes from knowing you can handle what comes. And knowing that panic only makes things worse. You will learn it too in time." For a moment they sat in silence, the stars above twinkling like distant fires. Lysara allowed herself to relax slightly, but her mind was alert. Even free, she could not let her guard down completely. Slavers were clever, and humans were rare here. She was a prize worth hunting. The next morning they set out again. Jarek had a plan. They would reach the edge of the mining sector, where neutral traders and safe havens existed. But Draxor 5 was a harsh world, full of natural hazards and hostile scavengers. The hovercraft cut through the air, dodging jagged rock formations and sudden dust storms. Lysara gripped the sides tightly, marveling at the speed and skill with which Jarek navigated the terrain. Suddenly, a shadow passed overhead, a patrol drone of the slavers. It hovered briefly, scanning the canyon below. Jarek's hands moved swiftly over the controls. "Hold on," he shouted. He maneuvered the hovercraft behind a rock outcrop, hiding them from the drone's sensors. Lysara's heart raced. "They found us!" she exclaimed. "They are persistent," Jarek replied calmly. "But persistence does not always mean success." Hours passed as they dodged more patrols and natural hazards. Lysara began to see Jarek's strategy. He anticipated each move, predicting where the slavers would look next and always finding paths that minimized risk. For the first time, she realized that humans had a combination of intelligence, creativity, and courage that made them formidable. During a rest stop near a small oasis, Lysara spoke quietly. Why me?" "There were other slaves." "Why choose me?" Jarek looked at her with a steady gaze. "Because I saw something in you," he said simply. "A strength, a spark. Even in chains, you did not lose it. Most would have broken long ago. I respect that." Lysara felt tears prick at her eyes. No one had ever respected her before. Not in the slave markets, not in the mines, not even in her own travels. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't need to say anything," Jarek replied. "Actions speak louder than words. You survived today, and that is enough." As night fell again, they set up camp under the open sky. Lysara kept watch, alert for any signs of danger. Jarek, sensing her vigilance, offered a small smile. "You are learning," he said. "Freedom is not only about escaping chains. It's about awareness, about making choices that keep you alive. And you are already doing it." For the first time, Lysara felt a sense of pride. She had always been strong, but the slavers had tried to convince her otherwise. Now, with Jarek by her side, she began to believe in herself again. The following days were filled with movement, strategy, and small victories. They crossed rough terrain, avoided slaver patrols, and scavenged for supplies. Lysara began to learn the ways of survival from Jarek. How to read the land, how to detect danger before it appeared, and how to remain calm under pressure. Each lesson made her stronger, more confident and more determined to never be enslaved again. One evening after a long day of travel, Lysara watched Jarek repairing the hovercraft. She noticed how methodical and precise he was, how he treated even broken machines with respect and care. It was unlike anything she had seen among the slavers who used everything until it broke and discarded it. Humans. You fix things even when they seem useless, she said softly. Jarek looked up and chuckled. Sometimes. It's not just about machines. It's about life too. Everything and everyone has value if you look for it. Lysara smiled faintly. She had never heard such words before. For the first time, she felt that someone truly saw her, not as property, not as a tool, but as a being with worth. As they rested that night, Lysara allowed herself a moment of hope. She did not yet know what lay ahead, what dangers the slavers would bring or what challenges the universe held. But she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer alone. She had an ally, a teacher, and perhaps a friend in Jarek. The stars above shone brightly, and for the first time in many cycles, Lysara felt a spark of something she had almost forgotten. Freedom. And with freedom came the possibility of more. Strength, knowledge, and perhaps even the chance to change her destiny. Tomorrow, they would face new dangers, but tonight, they could rest. And for Lysara, that was enough. The desert skies of Draxor 5 were a harsh mix of red dust and fading sunlight as Lysara and Captain Jarek pressed onward. Days of travel had taught her to read the land, the jagged rock formations, the hidden crevices, the shifting sandstorms. She had learned to trust her instincts and Jarek's guidance. Yet despite the lessons, every noise, every shadow kept her alert. Slavers were clever, and she knew that freedom could vanish in an instant. Jarek piloted the hovercraft along a narrow canyon pass, his hand steady on the controls. Lysara sat beside him, her eyes scanning the cliffs above. "How do you always know they aren't waiting?" she asked. Jarek shrugged. "I don't always know, but I prepare for it. Humans plan ahead. We assume danger will come and we stay one step ahead. That's the only way to survive." Lysara nodded, absorbing his words. Her mind, sharpened by months of captivity, began to adapt to this new way of thinking. She realized that freedom wasn't just about escaping chains. It was about thinking, anticipating, and acting before others could strike. Suddenly, the hovercraft shuddered violently. Alarms blared. "Ambush!" Jarek shouted. He spun the controls, narrowly avoiding a volley of energy bolts from hidden slaver drones above the canyon rim. Dust and sparks filled the air as the hovercraft dodged, swerving along the jagged path. Lysara gripped the side tightly, her stomach twisting. For a moment, panic threatened to take hold, but she remembered Jarek's lesson: calmness saves lives. She took a deep breath and focused. She watched the canyon walls, noting small shadows and glints of metal. "Over there!" she yelled. "On the left!" "They're trying to corner us." Jarek glanced at her, eyes wide with surprise and respect. "Good eyes," he said. He adjusted the hovercraft, weaving between rocks, using Lysara's warning to avoid the ambush. They shot forward, the engines roaring as they climbed a steep incline. The drones pursued, but Jarek's skill and Lysara's quick thinking gave them a narrow advantage. Once clear, they slowed to catch their breath. Lysara's heart pounded, but a new feeling had risen inside her, a rush of exhilaration. For the first time, she had played an active role in her survival, not just following orders. She felt alive in a way she had not felt for months. You saved us, Jarek said quietly. You have instincts most people would never notice. Lysera shook her head, trying to hide a small smile. I was just careful. I had to survive. That's all. Jarek leaned back, studying her. It's more than that. You think, you act, you adapt. That's what makes someone strong. That's what makes a human, or you, capable of more than most expect. Her cheeks warmed. She had been praised for intelligence and skill before, but never in a life-or-death situation. I thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me, Jarek said firmly. Just keep surviving. That's enough. The next day, the terrain shifted from jagged canyons to open plains dotted with strange, jagged rock formations. The sun beat down on them relentlessly and water was scarce. Lysera learned to ration what they had, carrying small containers of filtered liquid and learning how to conserve energy. Jarek taught her how to spot safe paths where scavenger creatures might hide, and how to detect signs of nearby patrols. See those tracks? Jarek pointed to a faint pattern in the dust. Slavers passed this way 2 cycles ago. They might try to predict our path. We'll change direction. Lysera studied the tracks, noting the crushed sand and broken stones. Slowly, she began to understand Jarek's methods. He thought like a predator, always calculating, always anticipating. I see, she said. We use their assumptions against them. Exactly, he said with a small smile. You're learning fast. By the 3rd night, they were near a ridge overlooking a small valley. Jarek had set the hovercraft down and erected a temporary shelter. Lysera kept watch while he slept, her senses sharp, listening for any signs of danger. Suddenly, movement caught her eye, a small group of figures approaching from the far side of the valley. Slavers, she whispered, waking Jarek. He sat up, scanning the area. Not just them. These are advanced scouts. They've been sent to track us specifically. Lysera's heart raced. The slavers had finally found them. But she did not panic. Instead, she prepared herself. For months, she had trained her body to endure, her mind to adapt. She would not be captured again. Jarek whispered a plan. We draw them into the canyon. You're going to flank them from the left. Use the rocks as cover. I'll take the main path. Together, we'll force them into a trap. Lysera nodded, her muscles tensing with anticipation. This was the first time she would actively fight alongside Jarek, using her own strength and intelligence. She felt a surge of determination. She would not be a victim again. The ambush began. Lysera crept along the rocky outcrop, staying hidden. The slavers moved into the canyon, confident that they had the humans cornered. Jarek's hovercraft roared through the canyon, drawing attention. Lysera moved silently, her hands gripping small energy devices Jarek had given her. As the slavers turned to chase Jarek, Lysera triggered the devices. Bright flashes and smoke erupted, disorienting the pursuers. She leapt from cover, knocking one slaver to the ground with precise strikes, disabling their weapon. Her body moved instinctively, fueled by adrenaline and months of survival training. Jarek watched her from the hovercraft, impressed. You've got skill, he muttered under his breath. Most would freeze. You adapt. Lysera did not stop. She fought with purpose, each move calculated, each strike deliberate. When the last slaver tried to regain control, she blocked and pushed them into the canyon wall, forcing them to retreat. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized. Breathing heavily, she stood beside Jarek as the dust settled. You were amazing, he said, clapping her on the shoulder. I just did what I had to, she replied. Though a small smile appeared, she felt pride swelling within her, a feeling she had not experienced since before her capture. Jarek shook his head. No, you did more than survive. You fought, you thought, you protected yourself and me. That takes courage, strength, and intelligence. You're not just a survivor, Lysera. You're exceptional. The praise warmed her in a way she hadn't expected. For so long, she had been treated like dirt, like property. Now someone recognized her worth, not as an object, but as a being. She began to see herself differently. That night, as they rested, Lysera sat watching the stars. I never thought I could fight back like that, she admitted softly. You always had it in you, Jarek replied. You just needed a chance to use it. She nodded, the realization sinking in. For the first time, she felt capable of controlling her own destiny. She would no longer be a slave, no longer a victim. Freedom was not just a word. It was a power, a responsibility, and a right she would claim fully. The next morning, the hovercraft carried them further into safe territory. Lysara's confidence had grown, and she noticed changes in herself. She moved with purpose, scanned her surroundings instinctively, and even began to anticipate Jarek's maneuvers. She was no longer only a passenger, she was a partner in this journey. As they approached the outskirts of a neutral trading station, Lysara realized how far they had come. From chains and despair, she had fought her way toward freedom, and yet she knew this was only the beginning. The universe was vast and dangerous, and challenges would continue to test her courage, strength, and mind. But she also knew this. With humans like Jarek by her side, she could face anything. Together they could survive, thrive, and perhaps even make a difference in a galaxy that often seemed cruel and uncaring. For the first time in many cycles, Lysara felt hope. Not a fragile, fleeting hope, but a strong, steady flame. Freedom was hers to claim, and she would not let it go. The slavers who thought her weak and worthless would soon learn that she was more than they could imagine. After the dust of Draxor 5 settled behind them, Lysara and Captain Jarek arrived at a neutral human settlement on the edge of the sector. The settlement was small but well fortified, tucked between rocky hills with energy shields flickering softly under the twin suns. Merchants and travelers from various planets moved about, trading, repairing ships, and sharing stories. To Lysara, it was a world unlike any she had known. A place where she could breathe without fear of being chained. Jarek guided her to a small dwelling at the edge of the settlement. "This will be our base for a while," he explained. "Here you can rest, eat properly, and start learning what it means to be free." Lysara looked around, her senses alert even as exhaustion tugged at her limbs. She had survived capture, an auction, and an ambush, but her mind had barely begun to process the idea of freedom. I don't know where to start," she admitted. "You start by surviving first," Jarek replied with a small smile. "Then you learn. Then you grow. Freedom is not just being unchained. It's knowing what to do with your life." Over the next few days, Lysara began the process of transformation. Jarek taught her how to maintain and repair equipment, how to navigate star charts, and how to anticipate threats in unfamiliar terrain. But perhaps most important, he taught her about human values, fairness, courage, and respect for life. Lysara absorbed it all, her mind a sponge for knowledge she had never had a chance to learn in captivity. She marveled at how humans balanced intellect and instinct, how they adapted to challenges that often seemed impossible. She felt herself growing stronger, not just in body but in mind and spirit. "You have natural talent," Jarek said one evening as she practiced combat drills with a training baton. "Most humans would struggle with your speed and reflexes. But your mind, that's what makes you dangerous to your enemies." Lysara paused, gripping the baton tightly. "I was trained to survive," she said softly. "But I never imagined I could use it like this, freely, without fear of punishment." "Exactly," Jarek said. "Survival is instinct. Freedom lets you use that instinct to shape your own destiny." Their training was interrupted one day by urgent news. Scouts from the settlement reported that a group of slavers had been spotted near the outer edges of the sector. They were hunting, looking for fugitives, slaves who had escaped or been purchased. Among their targets, Lysara realized with a chill, might be herself. Jarek's expression darkened. "They've found us," he said. "It's time to test what you've learned." Lysara's heart raced, but she did not falter. She had trained, she had learned, and she had survived. Now it was time to face a real threat, one that would determine if she could truly claim her freedom. They prepared for the confrontation carefully. Jarek laid out a plan. They would set a trap, using the terrain to their advantage, and draw the slavers into a narrow canyon where escape would be difficult. Lysara listened closely, memorizing every detail, and for the first time she was not just following orders, she was planning, thinking ahead, contributing ideas. "You'll be the lure," Jarek said. "They'll focus on you. Use their confidence against them. Lead them exactly where I need them. Can you do that?" Lysara's eyes blazed with determination. "Yes, I can do it." The next morning they moved into position. Lysara's pulse was steady, her senses sharp. As they neared the canyon, she spotted movement, shimmering heat waves hiding the shapes of slaver drones. She inhaled deeply and stepped forward, drawing attention. The slavers pounced, assuming their prey was vulnerable. Lysara led them through the canyon, weaving through rocks and using the terrain to slow them down. Every move was deliberate, every step calculated. She had learned to anticipate their actions, to exploit their assumptions, and to strike when they were off balance. Meanwhile, Jarek positioned himself at the far end of the canyon, ready to spring the trap. Lysara signaled with a small device, triggering a series of energy nets and traps hidden along the canyon walls. The slavers were caught off guard, their drones crashing into the nets, weapons entangled, and their formation broken. Lysara didn't hesitate. She used her baton to disable drones and unarmed enemies, moving with precision and confidence. For the first time, she felt the true power of freedom. She was acting by choice, not by force, not because someone commanded her. She was shaping the outcome of her life. Jarek emerged from his position, joining the fray. Together, they coordinated seamlessly, anticipating each other's moves without speaking. The slavers, expecting easy prey, found themselves outmatched. Within minutes, the ambush was over. The remaining enemies fled, defeated and demoralized. Lysara stood beside Jarek, breathing heavily but filled with pride. "We did it," she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Jarek nodded, clapping her on the shoulder. "You did it," he corrected. "I helped, yes, but you led the fight. You made the choices that won us this victory. That's what freedom feels like. Control over your own life." For the first time, Lysara allowed herself to feel truly unchained. She had survived the auction, evaded capture, and fought back successfully. She had claimed not only her life but her power. Over the following days, she continued to train, but now with a new purpose. She practiced combat drills, navigation, and tactical planning, always alongside Jarek. The bond between them grew stronger, built on mutual respect and trust. Lysara began to understand human thinking more deeply, their ability to adapt, their courage, and their belief in doing what is right. Even when it is difficult, one evening, as they rested under the stars, Lysara spoke quietly. "I never imagined freedom could feel like this," she admitted. "I thought it would be empty. Lonely, but with you it feels powerful." Jarek smiled, studying the constellations above. "Freedom is what you make of it. Alone, it can be fragile. Shared with allies, it becomes stronger. You are learning fast, Lysara. Soon you will not just survive, you will thrive." Lysara felt a surge of hope. She remembered the days in the slave yard, the chains cutting into her wrists, the cruel voices of the overseers. Now she could barely recognize that scared, broken version of herself. She was not only free, she was capable, strong and confident. A week later, the settlement received word of more escaped slaves from distant colonies. Inspired by Lysara's story and Jarek's reputation, a small group of humans and aliens volunteered to help protect them from slavers. Lysara found herself teaching them what she had learned: how to anticipate danger, how to move efficiently, and how to fight when necessary. She realized that freedom was not just personal. It could be shared, defended, and extended to others. One night, Jarek approached her as she reviewed star charts. "You've changed," he said quietly. "Not just in skill, but in how you see yourself. You're no longer someone who is protected. You're a protector now." Lysara felt her chest swell with pride. I never thought I could be more than a slave," she said softly. "But now, I want to help others like you helped me." Jarek nodded. "That's the spirit of a true survivor. That's the spirit of someone who values freedom, not just for themselves, but for all." Lysara looked at the stars, imagining all the worlds beyond Draxor 5, thinking of the people still in chains, the slaves still suffering. She made a quiet promise to herself. She would not forget the pain she endured. She would use her strength and knowledge to protect others, to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. And in that moment, Lysara understood the full meaning of freedom. It was not just being unchained. It was knowing you could act, decide, and shape your life and the lives of others through courage, intelligence, and strength. She had come far from the slave yards of Draxor 5. The journey was not over, but she no longer feared the path ahead. For the first time in her life, Lysara smiled without hesitation. She was free. She was strong. and she was ready for whatever challenges the universe would place before her. The settlement was quiet at first light, the twin suns casting long shadows across the rocky hills. Lysara stood on a ridge looking out over the valley below. The hovercraft sat ready, engines humming softly. Today she knew could change everything. The slavers who had chased her for weeks were regrouping, more determined than ever. They would not stop until they reclaimed what they thought belonged to them. Jarek approached her quietly. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lysara turned, her eyes clear and steady. "I am," she said. "I am not afraid anymore. I will not run. I will fight." Jarek nodded approvingly. "Good. Remember, today it's not just about survival. It's about standing for yourself and for those who cannot fight." She felt the weight of his words. Her mind drifted back to the slave yards, the chains, the pain, and the hopelessness. She remembered every insult, every blow, every moment she had been told she was worthless. Now she had the chance to stand tall, to protect not just herself but others like her. They moved out, traveling through a narrow canyon toward the predicted path of the slavers. Jarek's strategy was simple but effective. They would force the slavers into a trap using the terrain and Lysara's agility. She felt a thrill of anticipation, knowing that every lesson, every fight had prepared her for this moment. As they neared the canyon's entrance, shadows appeared on the rocks above. Slaver drones hovered, scanning, while heavily armed soldiers advanced below. They were confident, expecting an easy capture. They did not see the humans and the alien ready for them. Lysara took a deep breath. "We go now," she whispered. Jarek gave a small nod. She led the way, moving swiftly between rocks, invisible to the slavers until she chose to strike. Using energy nets and small explosive devices, she disrupted their formation. The slavers shouted, firing at shadows that disappeared and reappeared. Jarek's hovercraft roared behind her, cutting off their escape. The battle unfolded like a dance. Lysara leapt from cover to cover, disabling drones, disarming soldiers, and using the canyon walls to her advantage. She moved with precision and confidence, her body and mind working as one. The slavers underestimated her. They had expected a frightened, weak alien, not a capable fighter with intelligence, strategy, and courage. Jarek took on the drones, using his experience and skill to neutralize their weapons. He watched Lysara in awe. "You've become incredible," he muttered. "Not just free, but powerful." The fight lasted for what seemed like hours, though in reality it was less than one cycle. By the end, the slavers were defeated, some fleeing, some captured by their own chaos. Lysara stood panting, bruised but triumphant. Her hands shook slightly from exertion, but her eyes shone with pride and determination. "You did it," Jarek said, stepping beside her. "You fought like someone who has everything to protect. You are no longer a victim. You are a warrior." Lysara felt a rush of emotion, one she had not allowed herself in months. She thought of the chains, the cruelty, the endless days of despair. Now she stood free, respected, and strong. I can't believe this," she whispered. "Believe it," Jarek replied. "You earned it. Every step, every fight, every choice led you here." As the settlement welcomed them back, whispers spread among the people. They had heard of the slaver defeat, of the alien who had fought alongside a human to defend freedom. Many who had been skeptical of her abilities now looked at her with admiration and respect. Lysara felt a strange but wonderful sense of belonging. She was part of something bigger than herself, a community that valued courage and justice. Days later, word came of other slaves needing rescue on distant colonies. Lysara knew what she wanted to do. She approached Jarek. "I want to help," she said. "I want to protect them like you protected me." Jarek studied her, pride evident in his eyes. "You've come a long way. You're ready, not just for yourself, but for others. We will go together, but you will lead. You have the skills, the courage, and the mind for it." Lysara felt a surge of purpose. She had been chained and treated like dirt, but now she had strength, freedom, and a mission. She realized that true freedom was more than escaping slavery. It was using one's power to protect, to inspire, and to fight for what is right. Over the following weeks, Lysara and Jarek traveled to several colonies, intercepting slaver operations and freeing captives. Lysara's reputation grew. Stories spread of the blue-skinned alien who fought with humans to defend freedom. She became a symbol of hope for those trapped in chains, proof that courage and determination could overcome cruelty. One evening, as they rested under the stars on a remote planet, Jarek spoke softly. "You've done more than survive. You've changed lives. You've inspired others to fight for themselves. That is the power of freedom." Lysara looked up at the stars, her mind clear and steady. "I never thought I could make a difference," she said. "I thought I was too small, too weak, but now I see that even one being can change the world." Jarek nodded. "Humans believe that too. And now you do as well. That's why the universe respects those who fight for justice, who act with courage and who value freedom, not just for themselves, but for all." Lysara smiled faintly. She thought of the chains, the auction, the fear that had once consumed her. Those days seemed distant now, almost unreal. She had fought, survived, and grown. She had become someone who could not only defend herself, but also others. She had become a force of hope in a galaxy that often seemed cruel and uncaring. As they looked out over the horizon, Lysara made a quiet promise. She would never forget her past. She would honor the pain she endured by ensuring that others did not suffer as she had. Freedom was not just a gift, it was a responsibility, and she would bear it proudly. The twin suns of the new day rose over the horizon, bathing the valley in warm light. Lysara stood tall, her head held high, her body strong, and her spirit unbroken. She was free, she was powerful, and she was ready for whatever the universe had in store. And for the first time, she knew with certainty that no chain, no cruelty, and no slaver could ever take that away. She had been treated like dirt. She had been enslaved. She had been hunted, but she had survived. She had fought. She had risen. Lysara, once a prisoner, was now a warrior of freedom. The stars above beckoned, full of promise, danger, and opportunity. She would answer that call alongside Jarek and anyone willing to fight for justice. The galaxy was vast, but she no longer feared it. She had found strength in herself, courage in her allies, and purpose in her freedom. Her story from chains to hero was only beginning, but the universe would not forget it.